the one who brought this upon us! Who brought this upon us?
For years, and never learned which kind he is. Pine Hollow had lived beside 1 for 3, a schoolhouse on a hill at dusk, a storm-lined building black in the west, a ladder set against the eaves, and a man on the roof with a hammer, working fast against the weather, in a place where nobody had asked him to be. He thought he was fixing shingles. He was lighting a lamp over his own hiding place. The teacher would say afterward that she only climbed the hill to thank him, that she had the words ready, short, polite, finished. But standing on those steps, watching a stranger's careful work shed the first drops of rain, the thank you turned into something else on the way out. A question, 7 words, the kind of question that sounds small and lands like weather. He didn't answer it, not that evening. But that question would climb down the ladder with him, follow him home, and pull a 9-year-old lie up by the roots, one that a whole other town, far from Pine Hollow, had buried with the wrong man's name on it. Some storms come for roofs. This one came for the truth. Pine Hollow was growing faster than its lumber. New families every season. New fences, new pews, new desks squeezed into a schoolhouse built for a town half its size. The school stood on a hill like a promise the town had made its children and mostly kept. Whitewash fading, bell true, roof 20 years past its best. Storm season was the annual test. Every August, the west turned black once or twice, and every August, Pine Hollow patched what the wind took and called it even. Nobody worried much. Towns that are busy growing rarely look up, which meant nobody had noticed that the schoolhouse roof had quietly stopped being a repair job and become a wager. The town knew 3 things about Levi Cross. He'd come from somewhere east. 3 years back, he built things that outlasted their price, and he kept himself completely, deliberately, like a door built without a handle. He took work and did it well, took payment and said little, turned up nowhere a man could be looked at for long. Not the socials, not the card tables, not the church suppers where a town takes its own inventory. Strange one, the barber said. Good hands, though. Never talks about before. Every town keeps a shelf for men like that, and stops dusting it. But 3 years of quiet had cost Levi Cross more effort than Pine Hollow could imagine, because his kind of quiet wasn't preference. It was a discipline. Ellen Marsh taught 19 children in one room, which meant she noticed everything. Because children make sure of it. She noticed who came hungry, who came bruised from chores. And she noticed a water stain spreading over the 3rd row of desks like a slow brown country on a map. She reported the roof twice. The board had nodded twice. Nodding, she had learned, was what a board did instead of carpentry. So when the west went black on a Tuesday in late August, Ellen Marsh looked at that ceiling and did the arithmetic teachers do. 19 children. 1 bad roof. Weather coming. She dismissed school early and went home angry at men who gnawed. She never sent for anyone. Nobody did. He came at first light the next morning, before the storm, while the town was still deciding whether to worry. No one hired him. No one saw him climb. He worked the ridge line first, then the flashing, then the valley where 20 years of weather had done its quiet arithmetic. Fast, exact, no wasted motion. A man reading a roof the way other men read a page. He was done by early afternoon. He left no bill. He asked no thanks. He'd have left no trace at all, if work like his could hide. In 3 years, Levi Cross had never once let Pine Hollow owe him anything. Never once let a job lead back to a conversation. Not once. He collected his tools ahead of the wind and was gone. The storm hit that night like a debt collector. It stripped shingles off the mercantile, flattened the Hendersons' hay barn, peeled the church's north slope like an orange, and threw it into the graveyard. By morning, half of Pine Hollow stood in the mud, hands on hips, looking up at what the wind had charged them. And on the hill, above all of it, the schoolhouse sat untouched. Dry desks, dry books, a roof, so sound it looked smug. By noon, everyone knew whose work it was, because the town had one carpenter whose work looked like that, and he was the one man nobody ever saw. For 3 years, Levi Cross had been invisible. One good deed, And Pine Hollow finally looked straight at him. He'd have preferred the storm. She caught him 2 evenings later, on the schoolhouse steps, where he'd come to check his own seems the way careful men do, quietly, and at an hour chosen for its emptiness. Mr. Cross. He went still, the way a deer does. You saved my classroom. I'd like to thank you properly. No need. There's every need. The whole town's talking about you. And she watched something cross his face that she recognized. Because a teacher of 19 children has seen every kind of flinch there is. Not modesty. Modesty ducks. This was fear. The specific, practiced fear of a man being looked at. He touched his hat and moved past her down the steps. Ellen Marsh watched him go and began, without meaning to, doing arithmetic of a different kind. The county's man came in September to inspect the storm damage and gave Pine Hollow the news it half expected. The old schoolhouse had been saved by its roof and condemned by everything else. Undersized for the town it served. Foundations tired. Frame past argument. The county would fund a new one, bigger, proper, built to stand. Bids invited. The town celebrated the way towns do, with speeches about the future and pie. Ellen allowed herself to be glad. New desks, dry ceilings, room enough to teach. Nobody in Pine Hollow understood yet that the word bids is a door, and that doors don't ask who walks through them. Dutch Prescott arrived in October with a firm handshake, and the lowest bid anyone had ever seen. Big laugh, clean coat, references from 3 counties, all of them conveniently distant. He shook every hand on the school board twice and called the town's children our children within the hour. The board was delighted. Low bid, fast schedule, a man who smiled like a catalog. They signed inside a week. Levi Cross saw him from across the street on a Thursday. Just a glimpse, a stranger's laugh carrying over the mud. And Levi turned a stone in front of the feed store, because Pine Hollow had never seen Dutch Prescott before. But Levi had. 9 years and a whole buried life ago. She found him on the schoolhouse steps again in the last warm week, drawn there, though he couldn't have said whether he was checking the roof or saying goodbye to it. She didn't offer thanks this time. She'd learned that much. She sat down on the step below him, looked out at the valley, and asked it plainly, the way she asked children for the truth. Why do you hide from everyone? The valley went on being a valley. He looked at her for a long moment. Long enough that she saw the answer exist, saw him weigh it, saw him set it back down. Then he stood, touched his hat, and walked down the hill. She didn't call after him. Some questions work like posted letters. You don't have to watch them arrive. The town he never named was called Ashford, and 9 years ago it had a school with a fine new stairway. Levi Cross had built it. 26 years old, a foreman already, proud of every joint. Built it exactly to the drawings. What he didn't know was that the lumber delivered wasn't the lumber ordered. Green timber, undersized stock, swapped after the signing by the contractor, who pocketed the difference. The stairway held for 1 winter. In the spring, with a class coming down it, it let go. Broken arms, a crushed foot, children carried out of the dust screaming. The paper trail pointed at the foreman who'd built it. The contractor, a big laughing man with clean cuffs, shook his head sadly with everyone else. Levi didn't run because he was guilty. He ran because he could prove he wasn't, to no one who would listen. The new school's timber arrived in November, and Levi Cross watched the wagons roll past like a man watching his own past delivered by freight. He knew that lumber the way a burned man knows smoke. Too bright in the grain, too heavy in the stack. Green. He went at night with calipers and a boring bit, alone under a lantern, measuring what Pine Hollow's children would one day sit beneath. The specification posted on the board's own notice called for 10-inch joists, seasoned stock. His caliper said 8. His bore came out bleeding sap. He stood in the dark holding the evidence in both hands, and understood the arithmetic exactly. Speak, and Prescott would name him. Stay quiet, and someday, some storm, that roof would do its own naming. He tried the quiet way first, because 9 years of hiding teaches a man to try the quiet way first. He waited for Prescott behind the lumber stacks at dusk. The joists are 8-inch. The spec says 10. The stock is green. Prescott's smile didn't move an inch. You a county inspector now? Fix the materials. Do that, and I got nothing to say to anyone. And Dutch Prescott looked at him. Really looked. And Levi watched 9 years fall away from the man's eyes like a dust sheet pulled off furniture. Ashford, Prescott said slowly, tasting it. I never forget a scapegoat. The smile came back wider. One word, friend. One word to that board. And this town finds out exactly who's been living up their hill. And we both know how fast the town believes the worst about a quiet man. Ellen Marsh, meanwhile, had been teaching arithmetic. Practical arithmetic. The kind she believed in. She marched her older students to the building site on a bright, cold morning, with the board's posted specification copied out in her own hand, and set them a lesson. Measure, compare, show your work. 19 children with rulers and string, swarming a half-built frame while the crew smirked. The sums came back that afternoon in careful pencil. 10 inches promised, 8 inches standing. Every column, every child, the same 2 missing inches. She checked the figures 3 times, felt the floor of her gladness give way, and then did the most sensible thing in Pine Hollow. She took her numbers up the hill to the one man whose work had held when the sky fell. Now 2 people held the truth, and his secret sat between them like a third chair. He read the children's sums at his table by lamplight, and she watched his face confirm every column. You already knew, she said. I knew. Then why in God's name is a man like you silent? And there it was, her question from the steps, wearing work clothes now. He looked at her, and at the pencil figures, and at the parcel-shaped shadow up in his rafters that she couldn't see. Because the last time I told the truth about that man's lumber, he said, nobody believed the quiet one. She didn't understand. Not all of it. Not once did she look away, though. Then, don't be the quiet one, she said. Not this time. That night, Levi Cross took a wrapped parcel down from the rafter where it had lived for 3 years, and blew the dust off 9. Word went through Prescott's crew that the carpenter had asked the school board for floor at Sunday's meeting. Word always travels fastest toward the man it threatens. Prescott received it without blinking, boots up in the hotel, and his crew boss will remember how easy his voice stayed. Let him talk. Boards love paper, and the paper's all mine. Signed bid, posted spec, references 3 counties deep. He looked out the window, toward the hill. First storm to find that roof. I'm 3 counties gone anyway. A pause, and the smile cooled several degrees. And if he opens his mouth about lumber, I'll bring his storm to town first. Sunday came slow and cold. The board met in the church. The whole town made sure of it. The pews filled like a verdict assembling. The board took the altar table. Bid, contract, specifications squared in front of them like scripture. Ellen sat in the second row with 19 children's arithmetic in a folder on her knee. Levi came last, alone, carrying a canvas tool bag and a flat parcel tied in string, and the room did what rooms did to him. It looked, every eye, all at once. 3 years of curiosity finally given permission. He walked the aisle like a man walking into weather. At the front, rising smoothly before the chairman could speak, warm as a stove and twice as sure, stood Dutch Prescott. He had decided to go first. It was the last decision that ever went his way. Before this board hears a man behind me, Prescott said, sorrowful as a sermon, it deserves to know who it's hearing. Ask him about Ashford. Ask him about a stairway that came down with children on it. Ask him why a man changes towns and never says where from. The church made the sound a church makes when scandal arrives. One breath, taken by 80 people at once. The board stared. Ellen's folder creased in her grip. And Levi crossed in the aisle with every eye on him at last. The thing he'd hidden from for 9 years finally, fully arrived. He set down the tool bag. He's right, Levi said. The silence changed key. I'm the man from Ashford. He looked at Prescott, level as a chalk line. And that is exactly how I know what his lumber does. What happened next? Pine Hollow retold for years. The boring bit, produced from a bag, the plug of Joyce timber, bore that week, laid on the altar table. Greenwood, sap still bleeding at the rings, beside the specification promising seasoned stock. Ellen Marsh standing with her folder, 10 inches promised, 8 inches standing, measured by 19 children who show their work. And then the parcel, untied. A single sheet 9 years old, crease soft as cloth. The Ashford lumber order. The substitution, the cheap stock, the pocketed difference. In Dutch Prescott's own signature. I carried this 9 years, Levi said quietly. It was too heavy to put down. He laid it beside the plug. Turns out I was carrying it here. The chairman asked the only question left. Why stay silent so long? Levi looked at Ellen, second row. Because a man blamed once figures nobody believes him twice. She asked me why I hide. That was why. It stopped being a reason the day he bid on a schoolhouse. The bid was voided before the lamps were trimmed. The county took Prescott and his signature and his 3 convenient counties, and did with them what counties eventually do. And the board, after some throat clearing, asked the man from Ashford to build a school himself, to his own measure, at his own pace, with the whole town finally watching and him finally letting them. It went up true. Spring came, and with the first hard rain, drumming on a finished roof above 19 dry children and 1 satisfied teacher. She found him on the new steps after dismissal, listening to the last of it. She sat on the step below, the way she had that first evening. Why do you hide from everyone? Soft this time, almost smiling. Levi across listened to the rain on the roof he'd built in the open. I was waiting for a reason to stop. Above them, the water ran clean off good seasoned timber, steady as the man who'd cut it. That sound the rain makes on a well-built roof. That's what a promise sounds like, when somebody finally gets to keep it.